All right. If you've been keeping an eye on the US housing market, you know it's been, well, a total roller coaster. But lately, something's been shifting. There's this quiet but really important change happening in who's calling the shots.
I mean, for what felt like forever, it seemed like sellers had all the cards, right? Bidding wars, insane all cash offers, it was completely their game. But is that still true? Well, we're about to dig in and find out. Because, the numbers, the data is starting to tell a whole new story. This whole power dynamic is changing. And that negotiating table, it is starting to look very different.
Okay, so picture the market like a giant seesaw. For years, the seller's side was just planted firmly on the ground. But now, it's starting to tilt just a little bit back in the buyer's favor. So what's the proof? Where's the evidence for this? So how can we be sure this shift is actually happening? Well, the proof is right there in the numbers. Specifically, we're going to look at how people are paying for their homes. It's kind of like we're detectives, and these are the clues. And trust me, when you put them all together, they paint a really fascinating picture.
Okay, clue number one, the down payment. That big chunk of cash a buyer has to put down right at the start. It's always been a major signal of a buyer's financial muscle. And that signal, it's starting to look a little different.
And here's how it's changing. This past December, the typical down payment was 15.2% of the home's price. Now, I know, on its own, that number might not sound like a game changer, but just wait until you see how it stacks up against last year. Just a year ago, that same figure was 16.7%. So yeah, that drop is actually a pretty big deal. What it tells us is two things. One, buyers just have less cash on hand. And two, and this is the important part, sellers are having to accept offers that, well, they probably wouldn't even have looked at before. And this right here gets to the absolute heart of seller leverage. Listen to what Redfin's principal economist, Shahryar Bukhari, says. He points out that sellers, obviously, love big down payments. So the fact that they're now accepting smaller ones, that's a huge sign they're losing their grip. Plain and simple, they just can't afford to be as picky anymore. All right, let's move on to our next clue, which builds on this perfectly. We're talking about the holy grail of real estate offers, right? The all-cash offer. For years, that was like the ultimate weapon you could bring to a bidding war. And yet, get this, only 29% of buyers paid in cash this past December. That is the lowest share for that month in years. So yeah, it really seems like those mountains of cash are starting to shrink. But here is the really fascinating part. It's a total paradox. Even though cash offers are getting more rare, their power has actually gotten stronger. As Dallas agent Amanda Peterson explains, if you can come to the table with an all-cash offer today, man, you're in an amazing position to snag a serious discount. Sellers are practically jumping on those offers the second they see them. Okay, so our final clue is a little more in the weeds, but it's just as important. We're talking about FHA loans. Now, these are the government-backed loans that are designed to help people buy homes with smaller down payments. For a lot of folks, they're the main way to get into the market. Well, the share of these FHA loans dropped to just 14.4% in December. That's a 4-year low for the month. So what does that tell us? It tells us that even with programs specifically designed to help, the all-in cost of buying a house is just getting too steep for some people. And this is something Florida agent John Tomlinson is seeing on the ground every day. He points out, look, it's not just about the down payment. It's everything else that gets piled on top. You've got taxes, insurance, HOA fees. When buyers see that final number for closing costs, which can easily be tens of thousands of dollars, it's no wonder they get cold feet. Okay, so let's recap the clues. We've got smaller down payments, fewer all-cash buyers, and a drop in FHA loans. So why? What's actually causing all of this? Let's connect the dots and look at the big picture forces at play here. Okay, a massive piece of this puzzle is mortgage rates. They've come down pretty significantly from their peak. I mean, a year ago, rates were up around 7%, which was just crushing buyers' budgets. Today, they're closer to 6.1%. And look, I know a 1% drop might not sound like a huge deal, but on a typical mortgage, that can mean hundreds of dollars off your monthly payment. That is some serious, much-needed breathing room. But it's not just the rates. It's really more of a perfect storm of a few things. First, there's just less competition. Fewer buyers out there means the crazy bidding wars have really cooled off. And at the same time, you've got home prices that are still stubbornly high, plus this lingering sense of economic uncertainty. And all of that is making everyone, both buyers and sellers, way more cautious. All right, so we've dug into the data, we've talked about why this is happening, but now for the big question. What does this actually mean for you? Whether you're thinking about buying or maybe you're thinking about selling. Let's break down the new playbook. This slide really boils it all down. So, if you're a buyer right now, your big takeaway is that you've got more room to negotiate. That intense pressure to have an all-cash offer is way down. But, and this is a big but, you have to keep a close eye on those high closing costs. Now, if you're a seller, the game has definitely changed. You just have less leverage overall, and you gotta be ready to see offers that come with financing. And hey, if that rare all-cash offer happens to come your way, you treat that thing like it's gold. So when you look at all the evidence, the conclusion is pretty clear. That super intense seller's market we've all been living through for years, it's fading. The balance of power has finally shifted, and it's creating a much more level playing field. And that leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? With this balance of power shifting, is now the time to make your move? Or is this just the calm before another storm hits? For buyers who've been waiting on the sidelines, is this the moment you've been hoping for? And for sellers, is it time to adjust your expectations before that seesaw tilts even further? Because in today's housing market, it seems like the only thing you can really count on is more change.